influencing cloud formation and may account for most of the recorded temperature changes in the last century. I now submit an editorial about this project from the Wall Street Journal by Ann Joyles for the record.
Without objection.
Okay. In this piece, she says, charged subatomic particles from outer space or cosmic rays might significantly impact the type and quality of clouds that are covering the Earth, providing a clue to one of the least understood but most important questions about climate. Heavenly bodies might be driving long-term weather trends. And while scientists have discovered the sun's relationship to cloud cover, even more recently, there's been a study directly undermining this theory that CO2 levels are a major determinant of the Earth's temperature. A recent editorial from Investors Business Daily on the topic of this new study about temperature sensitivity to carbon dioxide undermines, and they say it undermines the case closed argument of the scientific elite. From the editorial, and I quote, "The left's proposed solution to the world's ills are based on the idea that carbon dioxide is a climate heating poison that must be scrubbed from the global economy at all costs. Yet another study shows this to be foolishness." And I submit that for the record at this point as well.
Without objection.
Despite of the weaknesses in the linkage between CO2 and temperature, the alarmists continue with their tactics. We just heard a report published in Nature Climate Change in the last few days that CO2 emissions in 2010 went up by 5.9%, which scientists claimed was the highest total annual growth ever recorded. Except they didn't record any CO2 emissions. They estimated that based on energy use. They didn't take into account, of course, new technologies that make gas and oil and coal cleaner and greener. The scientists didn't care about how cleanly coal and oil might be being burned. They just estimated or guesstimated CO2 emissions based on the total amount of coal and oil used. Well, and the media, like their lapdogs, faithfully reported that this sounds like a calamity when you have so much more CO2 coming in, even though they never measured any CO2 emissions. None of it was actually recorded. The truth is CO2 is not a pollutant. Anybody perpetuating that myth that CO2 is dangerous, a dangerous pollutant, is contributing to the health-destructive impact of real pollution by diverting resources and attention away from these very real challenges. We have wasted $25 billion or more on this foolishness. That is money that could have been used to develop new energy technologies, for example, that could have moved us off of our dependence on foreign oil. Some example of these technologies are the small modular nuclear reactors, which could offer us safety and no pollution, no leftover waste, but we didn't have the money for that. How about space-based solar power, which could collect solar energy from the sun out in outer space and transmit it to the Earth? Developing these new technologies will take hundreds of millions of dollars for these new reactors, billions of dollars for a space-based solar. Instead, we've squandered our billions of dollars and our limited science money and technology dollars on trying to prove that man-made global warming is something that we have to worry about and spread the fear. We have not pursued these or other technologies which could have fundamentally benefited everyone on the Earth, because we have been wasting our time and our resources. How are we doing? We've been wasting trying how to figure out how to bury carbon in the ground. And other such things. Well, Mr. Speaker, I am here to explain that this is utter nonsense and to warn of the danger that lurks behind this high-sounding cause. Well, don't miss the significance, by the way, of the Durban Conference in South Africa that is gathering now to determine how best to control our lives. As was happened in Kyoto and Copenhagen in the past, they now are meeting in Durban to try to find ways of issuing mandates to the people of the world in the name of stopping global warming. Mr. Speaker, I would suggest to the people of the United States they pay close attention to this. Eisenhower isn't here to protect us anymore. The fact is, our freedom is at stake.
Gentleman's time has expired.
The globalists would like to control the people of the United States. It's up to us to defend our freedom. The patriots will win if we stand together. And I now yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5th, 2011, the Chair now recognizes the very distinguished gentleman from Florida, Mr. West, for 30 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's very important that as we draw to the close of this first session of the 112th Congress, that we come back and we do what I believe is a yearly review or an assessment. Mr. Speaker, today, the 8th of December, was the target adjournment day that the leadership of the new majority of the United States House of Representatives hoped would mark the end of the first session of the 112th Congress. Yet today, we are short of completing some of the most important work that we must accomplish. As we enter the final days of 2011 and approach the end of this first session of the 112th Congress, I must take the time to offer an apology to the citizens of the 22nd Congressional District of Florida and to all my fellow citizens across this great nation. It is not because we have not changed the conversation here in Washington, D.C., but because I would have hoped our exertions would have been, as a collective body, a bit greater. Failure to pass a balanced budget amendment was a great disappointment, an example of a lack of exertion. When I was elected to the House of Representatives in November 2010, I was one of over 80 new members that you, the American people, sent to the House of Representatives, entrusting each one of us to come to Capitol Hill and work diligently and differently than our predecessors on the critical issues our country was facing during these challenging times. Record high unemployment, a quickly growing debt, out-of-control spending that leads to budget deficits year after year, a spiraling foreclosure rate around the country, and specifically back in our district in South Florida. Businesses shutting their doors, due in part to increasing uncertainty provided by the government from crushing regulations issued by federal agencies in Washington, D.C., and the list goes on. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, and our fellow citizens all believed our nation was on the wrong track, and we were concerned for our future. Many of them felt our country's best days were in the past and that our future looked bleak. Each of them wanted our federal government to take a different course of action. Mr. Speaker, I spent the majority of my adult life, 22 years, serving in the United States Army, never having been elected to public office. I have dedicated my career to serving our great nation, but unlike many of those whom I serve with here in Congress, I am not a career politician. I have led soldiers in combat on foreign battlefields and was ready to go to our nation's capital and lead from the front on this new battlefield. I understood that where my political experience would fall short, that my military training would enable me to serve my constituents well in the halls of Congress. Because in the military we were taught a simple principle, Mr. Speaker, and I think you know it well. We work until the mission is complete. And on election night of 2010, I knew that I was embarking, along with my new colleagues, on one of the most challenging missions that I would ever face. The leadership of the new majority in the House of Representatives created a calendar for the first session of this Congress, and as a newly elected member of this body, I provided my assessment, stating that I believe the schedule did not provide the necessary days on Capitol Hill to address the pressing issues our nation faced. Now, 1 year later, unfortunately, it seems I was correct. On the eve of the holiday season, the United States Congress is dealing with some of its most important issues, all while pressed against the desire to be home and with our families and loved ones. Mr. Speaker, I, along with you, spent many holidays away from our family and friends while serving our country in the armed forces. Every time I was away from home during the holiday season, as well as I'm sure you did, I proudly put on my uniform and did my duty on behalf of the American people. And while I may not wear the uniform of the United States Army any longer, I am proud to put on my new uniform of a suit and tie and spend this holiday away from home once again putting our country first so that we may finish the job our constituents entrusted us to do. Now, I don't want people to think that I am not happy about certain things, because I am truly pleased that the regular order has been established here and returned to the House floor. The American people are able to see vibrant debate on the pressing issues. Legislation is developed by members and cleared through committee. We are slowly seeing a move away from mega bills. But yet these so-called omnibus bills do a disservice to the American people, because rather than allowing elected representatives to vote aye or nay on certain provisions, these bills create a bill that includes hundreds of provisions aimed at clobbering together enough votes for passage. During the first session in the month of April, I was able to bring to the House floor H.R. 1246. This bill cut $35.7 million of wasteful spending in the form of printing and reproduction at the Department of Defense. What was so important about this legislation is that the vote was 393-0, meaning that we were able to get unanimous support from both Republicans and Democrats. The American people expect their elected to work together to deal with the issues of our nation. However, Mr. Speaker, we have witnessed over 900 days without the United States Senate passing a budget. 900 days. When the House of Representatives did our job and passed the budget on the 15th of April, 2011, Democrats continued to use it as a political weapon, since it finally addresses the exorbitant mandatory spending that is bankrupting our country and leaving critical programs like Social Security and Medicare on an unsustainable path. Americans continue to struggle with 9% plus unemployment for over a year. In South Florida, it is even higher. But instead of debating the 20-plus bills passed by the House, many bipartisan, that address the anemic job situation in which we are stuck, these bills languish on Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid's desk, while President Obama continues to try to convince the American people that this is a do-nothing Congress. It is indeed a do-nothing Senate. One of the most important and constitutionally mandated functions of the Congress is to fund the federal government each year before the beginning of the fiscal year on October the 1st. This year, of the 12 funding bills, the House completed 6 of those bills, and the United States Senate only completed 1. Congress did not finish conferencing any appropriations bills to be signed by the President by the October the 1st deadline. This means that once again we had to pass continuing resolutions to prevent a shutdown of the federal government. I wrote the chairman of the House Committee on Appropriations suggesting that appropriations bills should be considered on a priority-based tiered system. I presented several questions, such as what he believes should be considered priority bills, and whether or not certain appropriations bills should cover a 2-year period in order to provide more certainty in the marketplace. See, Mr. Speaker, in the military, something that continues to fail means that it is broken. And when something is broken, it must be fixed. Our fellow citizens understand that the path we are on is broken, and they also understand it is time to fix it. Therefore, we must focus on structural reforms to our legislative and appropriations process. Over the course of my first year in office, I've been asked numerous times why we refuse to compromise and why can't we just get something done. Mr. Speaker, I find it very funny that no one talked about compromise in regards to a $2 trillion health care law, or a $1 trillion stimulus package, or cap and trade, or card check. But my answer is simple. The House of Representatives has tried to work with the Senate and President Obama, yet they refuse to listen to the will of the people. Tabling the cut, cap, and balance piece of legislation during the debt debate is a prime example. Instead, they wish to remain on the same path that has proved to be a failure year after year. They refuse to believe that we need major structural reforms. They did not heed the message of the American people of November of 2010. And while Washington, D.C. has a budget deficit, the leadership deficit is even more disconcerting. Mr. Speaker, leaders take responsibility, and rarely do they take credit. A simple lesson that was taught to me as a young captain in the United States Army. A strong American leader would not take the misfortunes facing the American people and leverage it for political gain. And the facts speak for themselves. Since January of 2009, more than 2 million Americans are unemployed. Close to 26 million are underemployed. National unemployment has been at or above 9% for 28 straight months, at or above 8% for 34 straight months. And it is double that in the black community. Average gas prices have gone from $1.83 to over $3.45. The federal debt has gone from $10.6 trillion to over $15 trillion, with 3 straight years of trillion-dollar-plus deficits, and the debt per person, Mr. Speaker, has gone from $34,000 to $48,000. Food stamp recipients are up by 41%. Americans in poverty up 16%, with an increase of 6.4 million Americans. The misery index is up 65%, and nearly 48.5% of Americans are on some form of government aid. Home values are down 11%, and health insurance premiums are up 23%, from $3,354 to over $4,000. United States global competitiveness is down from 1st to 5th in the world. We currently borrow 42 cents on every dollar, a dollar which soon, thanks to the insidious monetary policies emanating from the Federal Reserve, may not any longer be the default currency of the world. Yet with these abysmal statistics, all we hear from the big megaphone of the White House is that we need to tax people, particularly certain people, more. We hear about extending a payroll tax holiday, which is nothing but a Band-Aid approach that only provides a very short-term impetus. What no one is telling the American people, especially our seniors, is that the constant use of payroll tax breaks continues to erode the funding of Social Security, which for the first time this year was running at a deficit. When combined with the unemployment situation, we are speeding up the demise of Social Security in America. At some point, there must be structural tax and unemployment reform, and we must incentivize our job creators. America is suffering, Mr. Speaker, from crony capitalism, in which the government is picking the winners and the losers in the free market, using our hard-earned taxpayer dollars. We have an Obama administration which believes it is the preeminent venture capitalist in our nation, and episodes such as Solyndra and MF Global should cause us all grave concern. See, Mr. Speaker, American exceptionalism is not constrained by class or caste. There are income levels in our country, but sound economic, tax, and regulatory policies enable our citizens to transit those levels, because America is about equal opportunity and not equal achievement, where liberal progressives believe that they are the arbiters of fairness. There is no leadership emanating from the White House. Instead, we have policy by election cycle sound bites, where the purpose is just to get reelected. Too many politicians are now focused on manipulative and deceitful rhetoric and not developing visionary, pro-growth economic policies for America. The obvious goal, it seems to me, Mr. Speaker, is to create more victims in America, an America of dependency, not individual independence. So therefore, our nation is truly at a crossroads. There is an ever-widening ideological chasm of what we are going to become as a nation. Shall America continue as a constitutional republic led by men and women of courage, conviction, and character? Or shall America become a bureaucratic nanny state ruled by manipulative deceivers seeking their own political gain? Is America truly that shining city that sits upon a hill, Mr. Speaker, or will that light be forever extinguished? The choice lies before the American people. And I hope that they will choose wisely, because our children and our grandchildren are watching, as well as our enemies abroad. But, Mr. Speaker, for America, I say this: fear not, for the guardians of America's honor shall ensure that the greatest days for this constitutional republic lie ahead. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The question, does the gentleman have a motion? The question is on the...
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I provide the motion that we adjourn.
All right, the question is on the motion to adjourn. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
The House today approved a bill preventing the Environmental Protection Agency from issuing farm dust regulations. The House is back tomorrow for